all true, Johnny. But don't you fret. They're both safe.
It doesn't matter if you loved or hated Cyberpunk at release, CD Projekt Red have now fully realized their vision and in many cases far exceeded what they set out to achieve. This comes with the addition of Phantom Liberty, the new expansion for the game, and patch 2.0, which changes a lot of the base game for free. I've had a chance to play the 2.0 update as well as finish Phantom Liberty and all it has to offer. So with that, I'll be running through the exact features that upgrade the base game and that you're getting from both Update 2.0 and Phantom Liberty. I'll be answering if this is the best time to re-enter Night City and if the expansion is worth the cost of entry, all while trying to be as spoiler-free as possible with the appropriate timestamps below. Just a final note that I've been provided footage from CD Projekt Red and won't be able to show my actual footage until the embargo drops, so be sure to sub for future in-depth Cyberpunk DLC guides and coverage. First and foremost, the update includes a completely redesigned perk tree. I don't just mean perks have moved around and had some major balance changes, no, it's been completely redesigned. For more on this, check out my perks showcase video. I can't see a single perk that's the same as the original release's version. This is for the better as it no longer feels like they're simple stat increases and that you're pigeonholed into single playstyles. I started off focusing tech, which had major buffs to explosives, but also recharge grenades so I could keep throwing them over and over, as well as tuning me into a walking EMP bomb. But alongside these perks in the tech tree was one focused around what I can only describe as being a cyber psycho, letting you equip far more cyberware than you normally are able to, a system which has also been reworked and I'll explain soon. This overclocking comes with a cost to your health, but each point you're over, you have a higher chance to break into a fury, gaining various damage buffs, and it sounds just cool as hell when it happens. The tree also had upgrades to specific weapons, letting them shoot electricity charged just right that jumps to enemies. This is just a taste, but your build can synergize between other attribute skill trees as well. For example, Cool has a pass suited to throwing weapons and the grenades just so happen to be thrown. The skill system has also been improved. There are categories like Engineer that are raised when you do particular things in a game like using tech weapons and getting skill shards. Each stage they go up, the more passive bonuses you get, sometimes getting a perk point with rather large effects on the tail end of these paths. So you're rewarded for using particular playstyles without locking you into them. Back to perks though. Every tree has gameplay changing perks besides the passive increases, like doing air dodges or slamming a hammer down for an AoE quake attack. With my build, I could use any type of tech weapon I wanted, be it shotguns or snipers, be it stealthy, or be it guns blazing, which is completely based on my cyberware. Which leads me into the next updated system, your cyberware. No longer does it feel static. Buy a piece, put it on a Reaper dock, and that's it. You can now upgrade individual pieces with crafting components. Along with upgrading weapons and crafting, you'll need to decide where you want to use your rarer components. Also, your armor now comes from the cyberware you choose to deck yourself in, and not your clothes. In fact, besides a few inconsequential buffs, clothing is mostly a cosmetic choice now, but damn does it feel like there are a lot of choices. You also have an equip limit. Once you reach it, you'll have to unequip cyberware to equip more. Some of the most powerful cyberware have a high cost. If you want to equip the most cyberware possible, there's a tech tree like I mentioned, but also cyberware that boosts the amount you can equip, but it comes at the cost of using a slot you could otherwise equip powerful operating systems in, like Berserk or Sand Deviston. The 4 armed-based cyberwares are back as well, like the Gorilla Arms and Mantis Blades. However, now they get their own skills which can buff them up. For example, letting you charge up a big finishing blow with the Gorilla Arms to send an enemy flying. You need Phantom Liberty for this, more on that later. The arms also have variants with different damage types like thermal and toxic. Best of all, cyberware is attuned to a particular attribute. So for example, the normal Gorilla Arms are attuned to body. For every point you have in body, the cyberware does 0.5% more damage up to 10% at 20 attribute points. Whereas the toxic version is attuned to cool, making for some synergy between cool toxin related builds. Each piece of cyberware has an attunement to an attribute, which will most likely influence where you want to spend your hard-earned eddies first. Cyberware can also be brought up in tier using crafting components. You can find these around the world or disassemble items you're no longer using. Higher tiers means better stats on the cyberware. Like I mentioned, cyberware can be brought up in tier by using crafting components. You can find these around the world or disassemble items you're no longer using. Higher tier items in cyberware means better stats. That's not all. Weapons in Cyberware have randomly rolled extra stats at the bottom of their description. These can give bonuses like 3% extra explosive damage and 5% extra health item effects. When you raise the tier, most of the time you'll be given a choice between 3 versions or with a different roll of those random stats. So those who like to really grind for a specific stat build, you can. So the free update really changes up loot. You'll now see items of different tiers that can be upgraded to better ones, all having different stats. You notice that iconic weapons, which are basically unique weapons, have effects listed more clearly, with some having changed. For example, I found a set of uniques that worked well together. A knife that you throw into enemies' legs, and a pistol that makes the knife explode and return to you. Crafting is more or less the same, but much more streamlined. You also get improved vehicle combat. While in the vehicle, by pressing a single button, you bring up crosshairs. You can then swap between pistols or single-handed weapons to fire wherever you aim. Now, some cars will come equipped with weapons that you can fire this way as well. With the free update, you get cannons on some vehicles of various types, but with the expansion, you get some that have missile launcher systems with pretty devastating results. I was using a Militech truck with cannons and missiles most of my playtime in Phantom Liberty, only swapping to the Caliburn when I wanted some speed. There are plenty of opportunities to use weapons in the decent amount of car chases throughout Cyberpunk 2077, and it feels super easy to use. The update makes car chases, especially with Night City's finest, much more thrilling and viable, which is good because the police have been overhauled as well. So police have received some changes as well. Most of that is in their AI, as they're notably not as stupid. Don't get me wrong, they aren't winning any awards, except maybe Employee of the Month, because they see their friends getting blown apart and keep on coming at you. You can still evade them by staying out of view for a set amount of time based on your wanted level, but now they put up much more of a fight and don't just spawn behind you like teleporting Robocops. It feels much more like GTA's police, but unlike GTA, Cyberpunk is an RPG. When I was max level with max iconic weapons and cyberware, I was mowing through police by legion. There were armies of bodies around me and I waded through them with ease. This is not the case at lower levels, hence RPG. After a long while of slaughtering the cops, max tac, police who are so chromed up they're on the verge of cyberpsychosis themselves, start triangulating your position. If you see that, run and hide unless you really want to be challenged. When they come as a squad of boss level opponents. They won't drop with a single shot to the head, they hack you, snipe, melee, all working together to take you down, and at least out in the open, I was taken down rather quickly. The free update comes with various UI changes as well, making everything a little easier to navigate. It's hard to explain without being able to show you, but at a glance everything is easier to read and understand, especially since the universe of Cyberpunk is about sensory overload and the sheer amount of text you need to sift through doesn't help you process it at all. Now, the items are structured, the tabs are obvious, and your resources are clearly listed. During my time in Dogtown, I didn't once critique the UI like I constantly did in Starfield, so that means it's a good design in my eyes. Finally, for the free update, there's a ton of new music and 2 new radio stations. I overall enjoyed these and it definitely added more music to my rotation. In the case of Phantom Liberty, new missions and side content all had new and interesting soundtracks. Fighting different gangs will have different banging music, and fighting the new baddies of Dogtown is no different. I tried to drag our fights just to hear the tunes. So those are all the new features coming to Cyberpunk 2.0's update. I've briefly mentioned a few points that are exclusive to the expansion, Phantom Liberty, so let's go through all you'll be getting and top it off by answering if it's actually worth your money. First and foremost, the expansion adds a new region of the city, Dogtown, in previously inaccessible areas of Pacifica. It's a walled-off district filled with new cyber psychos, stalkers, gang fights, opponents, and loot, as well as 13 large main missions and 17 new side quests and gigs. This includes a new ending for the base game. The place looks run down and barely hanging on, as its makeshift ruler is a disgruntled ex-soldier who wants to keep his town outside of the law, thus it's filled with thousands of criminals that want to stay off the police's radar. You'll find loads to do here even beyond the side missions. I saw a marker, for example, and was led into an area with very difficult enemies and a boss drone with heavy weapons and missiles. I was rewarded with iconic weapons and items. The side content and gigs are fully voiced and fully realized. You won't be collecting pig skins here. Each mission has twists and turns and is genuinely surprising. Like one had me puff some combat enhancers to kill gangoons from the perspective of the main bad guy, all in a piece of optional side content. There was a few instances where side content choices I made came up in the mainline mission path. Speaking of, main missions are intense and clearly the budget here was insane. You start off by playing a Michael Bay movie, then transition into a spy thriller of sorts, gathering intel, infiltrating, and trying to get out alive. This is Cyberpunk, so expect morally grey choices that you'll need to make with consequences you'll think about when you lay awake at night singing the Edge Runners theme. This is no DLC, it's a full expansion with lengthy extra content, and the differences in major choices will affect the following missions you take. One choice path was so thrilling I could hear my heart pounding. I won't tell you which it is, but the other wasn't as impactful to me. The storyline is around half that of the base game's length if you rush through. Keanu is back, and if you play the full game leading into Phantom Liberty, he doesn't skip a beat with his attitude and his placement in the world. However, there are characters that are stars of the show, Idris Elba being the most obvious one, but I'll refrain from talking about the rest. The story will have you tied up with some massive players in Cyberpunk's universe, so the stakes are high and the rewards are potentially just as high. Phantom Liberty brings with it a ton of new boss fights like I mentioned before, new gigs and side content. There are two kinds of repeatable dynamic events in that occasionally you'll see supplies dropped and enemies defending the area. Goes without saying that you can go over there, kill your way to them, and reap nice rare rewards. There are also vehicles around Night City that you can steal and deliver that yield the same kinds of rare rewards. You'd think the game would just randomly pick a car and give you a reward for taking and delivering, thus making it dynamic and repeatable, which is the case for some, but there's more to it than that in some cases. In one, I had to steal a car that had experimental radar tech and the mission went in another direction. These vehicle missions give you a chance to really enjoy the new vehicle combat system, and airdrop supply missions let you really mess around with your new combat abilities and skills. They're all quick to complete and weave between other missions. Speaking of new abilities, Phantom Liberty also offers a new Relic skill tree and abilities. It's small, so don't expect an overwhelming amount of choices here, but each gives you a new ability. At the start of Phantom Liberty, one of the characters will unlock the potential of the relic in your head. You know the lock section of the skill tree we were all thinking would unlock in the base game? Well, this is it. When the previously mentioned character unlocks it, you can choose one of the skills there. Then moving forward, you have to find special points on the map or meet particular requirements to gain more points. These abilities include upgrading the capability of your arm-based cyberware, like I mentioned before. The Mantis Blades, for example, getting a powerful leap after you take down an enemy. These can be further upgraded with another point. You can also unlock the ability to see and strike enemy weak points, which aren't on the head before you ask. When you shoot these points, the spot will usually explode or overload for huge damage. You also have a skill that supports a stealthy playstyle, which is now mostly relegated to Cyberware with things that can turn you invisible and legs that can reduce your noise when moving around, letting anyone stealth, not just those who are invested in the cool attribute. Phantom Liberty also comes with a ton of new items, including weapons, cyberware, cars, and fashion. They say over 100, but I'm sure most of those are fashion items. There seems to be a lot of new weapons and cyberware, and I saw plenty of new vehicles as well, like the aforementioned Militech truck which came with equipped missiles. I purchased it while at a safe house surfing the web on a laptop. I haven't had a chance to try out every new weapon, especially the iconic ones, but there are enough there to keep any build entertained. Finally, the level cap has increased to 60, giving you 10 more attribute and skill points to play with. Much needed too, as I started a DLC on my level 50 character and having experienced progression felt nice. Of course, since then I've started a fresh character and focused only on body, since you can throw enemies at each other now like you're Donkey Kong. So ultimately, is this the best time to re-enter Night City? The answer is a firm yes. Cyberpunk 2077 has never been better, unless you're on the last gen system of course, in which case, no one cares what you think. Jokes aside, CD Projekt Red didn't give up on the title and it shows. Without spending a cent, you'll have a much more polished experience with a ton of updates and changes. Some may argue that we should have gotten this at the start, and I'm not here to discuss the merit of that argument. Rather, that if you were planning on replaying the game, playing it with the new Cyberpunk 2.0 update is most definitely the way to go. If you were holding out, now is the time to jump back in and experience Cyberpunk in all of its glory. That's all good and well, but how about the expansion? Is it worth the cost of entry? The answer is also a yes, which is upgrade to a firm yes if you want more content, more story, and more Cyberpunk. Now, if you didn't enjoy Cyberpunk 2077 at all, the expansion won't change that. It's a big open city game that has you enjoying well-acted missions and blowing limbs off in bullet time. If you didn't resonate with that before, don't bother with the expansion. However, if you didn't enjoy it before because of the jank, because of the police, the skills, or simply because you heard bad things about it, then it's worth checking out now. This is the best Cyberpunk has ever been, and it's a damn good time. I don't do reviews as I find them outdated and inconsistent. The recent spectacle that was Starfield reinforced that fact. So hopefully I've given you the tools to assess if you think Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty is for you, or if you should jump back in with 2.0 and give the game a shot. If this was at all helpful, I would appreciate you slapping your loved one's ass and telling him to sub to Dantix. Right now the percentage of people who watch versus who are actually subscribed is low, and I think we can get to at least 69%. Thank you so much for watching. Until my next video, ciao friends.